Hey there, Bill Hayes here, the host of Occudocs, the podcast. And don't forget to watch Occudocs, the short videos about what people do, because most people don't know what other people do, and they keep wondering what they could, should, and would be. So please join us again for Occudocs, and tell your friends and subscribe and hit that like button. Hi, welcome back to Occudocs podcast. We have a fantastic guest today, Greg Bohlen, an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, a farmer. And Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Bill.
Let's go back to the beginning. How does someone, you were a farmer before you were a venture capitalist.
Was a farmer back in Illinois.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
So I grew up on a corn and soybean farm in Illinois, and we did everything wrong that you could possibly do. We didn't know anything about the soil. All we knew about was the crop and the yield, and that was our entire focus. We didn't care about nutrient density. We weren't focused on what we produced other than tonnage per acre. And so that was my experience growing up on a farm, and it was the best that we knew because that's what the University of Illinois taught us.
So, but you always, your mind wandered from the farm. You told me a story I want you to tell our audience about looking up at that airplane.
Yeah, so you would lay by beans in the summer, and that was the most tedious job because you could only go about 2.5 miles an hour. And if your attention wandered or you fell asleep, the cultivator would take out beans. We call it a lightning strike in the middle of the field. And so you had to pay attention, but it didn't mean that I couldn't see the contrails going across the sky. I'd look up and I thought, God, I'd do anything to be on that airplane right now. And then years later, when I was a venture capitalist flying across the country for about the 6th time that week, I'd look down and I'd see a tractor working in the fields and I'd think, God, I'd do anything to be on that tractor.
Interesting story for people, right? In terms of where we are anytime in our life, you just never know, do you?
You sometimes the grass is truly greener on the other side of the pasture.
Lovely pun, yes, indeed. So off to school for you, though, not to farm for a living, right? Tell me how, because you don't become a venture capitalist without the kind of education you ended up procuring and the kind of experience it took. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So I went to the University of Illinois. I had to get out in 3 years because we didn't have any money. And I went to work at a bank doing ag workouts. It was at the height of the farm crisis back when Willie Nelson was singing for farmers.
Now, ag workouts
means that farmers, we had to work out their loans. They were in debt beyond what they could pay. And so we had to do credit workouts where you find a way or a path for them to repay the bank.
Let me just inject here. Farming financially is a really challenging business, isn't it? Most farms are owned by the banks, aren't they?
Well, the banks certainly have liens against the crops, and they may have liens against the farm ground. A lot of farm ground has been used because farm ground has accelerated in value, has been used to finance the farm operations. And so by virtue of that, a lot of farms end up being in hoc to the bank.
Well, yeah, keep going because I love how your story ends up personally, the way you've ended up using all these things eventually to help you.
I got an opportunity to work for another bank because I was pretty good at working loans out. And another bank had the same kind of a portfolio problem. And so when I came, I said, I'll come, but if you ever sell the bank, I want the right to buy it at first right of refusal at book value. And he laughed because banks were trading at about 0.6, 0.7 times book and said, sure. And so along the way, I ended up doing a promotion for the bank where I gave away guns for deposits. And I ended up being the #1 Colt dealer in the country for 2 years running. And we raised about $7.5–8 million for the bank in deposits on CDs. They were 6-year, and I gapped them on CMOs, which nobody knew what a CMO was at the time, but collateralized mortgage obligation by the federal government. But what happened was I ended up with several $1 million in gains on those bonds that couldn't be recognized by the bank. And so the book value was substantially below what the market value was. And the guy honored it. He had a heart attack and honored his agreement, and he sold me the bank. And we paid it off in a couple of years. And
So suddenly you owned a bank.
I owned a bank.
I mean, most people can't even imagine. I can't. Owning a bank,
Yeah,
right?
I was 25 and I owned a bank. And we did a bunch of crazy stuff. And the FDIC hated us because we obviously were, high profile, giving guns away for CDs. And
No, back up before everybody just sort of loses their mind about the fact that you're 25 and owned a bank. You had some education that helped you with all this. Tell me about your 2 degrees.
So I got an undergraduate degree at the University of Illinois, and I got econ. And then I went back for an MBA, and the executive MBA. And I did that while I was at the second bank that I went to work for. I went to the executive program. And at the time, I was the youngest person that had gone through the executive program. Again, just very fortuitous luck. If you look at my career, it's been luck after luck after luck.
Well, you make your own luck, as they say, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of luck.
Well, you got to, or what did Will Rogers say? You got to show up too.
Yeah.
There's a few good truisms.
You got to be willing to take risk, right?
You've got to do a lot of things.
Yeah. So we ended up, we had a chance to double our money in the bank in a short period of time. In 18 months, so we sold the bank. And I went to work for Merrill Lynch as a stockbroker. Merrill Lynch, I hated it. But I was a 111 producer because I knew a bunch of people from the banking industry. And so Merrill had this crazy thing where they were trying to gather assets. And so they would safe keep the bonds for nothing. And banks were paying, $100,000, $200,000 a year to have their bonds safe kept. And so what I did was I said to the bankers, look, I'll safe keep your bonds for nothing if you'll trade bonds with me for $1 a bond, which was an institutional pricing. They all agreed, and within a few months, I had billions in assets, which put me at the top of the heap in Merrill Lynch in my what they call LOS, length of service class. And if you were a 111 producer, they let you do anything. And so I wanted to do investment banking, not stock brokerage.
So that's how you became an investment banker.
Yeah, that's how I became focused on venture capital.
What's the key to success in being a venture capitalist?
Seeing around corners. So being able to see where the economy's moving in 5 or 6 years. Because when you start a company, it takes a long time for that company to germinate and to grow and to begin to form what it really is, to be able to take advantage of the economy. And so even with pivots, you still have to be able to see years down the road.
Not so easy, particularly today. Everything is changing so fast. I mean, how can you, in the world of AI and such, see around a corner? I mean, those corners are there before you know it.
Yeah, corners are much closer than they were 2 years ago.
Objects are much closer than they appear.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a great time to be alive. And I think actually I probably grew up in the best time of venture capital to ever be in the business. And as you know, Bill, we've been very lucky. We were rated the #1 private equity fund of funds for since 2021, I guess.
So the last 4 years. That's brilliant. When was your first computer class? I remember you telling me about your early days of computer. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. So I never took a computer class, but I was a ham radio operator when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so I learned electronics, and I learned basic language, COBOL 4 and WHAT 4. And when I came to the University of Illinois, they had posted on the board a thing looking for volunteers to work on a project called IPTIP, which was the way that you packet information. They wanted to have decentralized compute. DARPA, let me back up. DARPA wanted to have decentralized computing. And the way that it worked, you had a T1 line from this computer to the main computer, and from that computer to the main computer. And if you wanted to talk to that computer, you had to go there first. And so the problem was that if you attacked Russia and you attacked with a nuclear missile and you took out that computer, you took out the awareness of the network. And so they wanted to have decentralized computing. And so, but they needed a way to send packets of information back and forth across and then have them routed to where it should go as opposed to just broadcasting to an entire network. Mm-hmm. So that was a DARPA project the University of Illinois worked on, was the IPTIP.
So you've been you are a very successful venture capitalist, still are. And then a few years, you move to North Carolina as part of this, you buy some land, and suddenly it's Greg the farmer he can't get rid of, come back.
Yeah.
Right?
Take the boy out of the country. You can't take the country out of the boy.
It seems to be.
Yeah.
So it started out innocently enough, I guess, as a hobby in your backyard with some of these grapes, and has blown up into anything but,
Yeah, we had quite a process. So I bought the ground behind the house, and I bought 10 acres, which is the minimum for a farm, and then I bought the ground behind the house, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. So I looked at growing truffles. I came very close to moving that direction, and then ended up deciding that wasn't a good bet. About 3% of truffle farms ever produce. So that's, even for a venture capitalist, those odds are...
Yeah, 97% failure, that's not very good.
Yeah, that's not what I was...
For a baseball player.
And so along the way, I met Jeff Bloodworth, who was a breeder, was in charge of oenology at NC State.
Oenology is?
Growing grapes.
Okay, growing grapes. And breeding, you have to understand, because I've met Jeff and he told me this and I was completely confused. It's like, he's told me he bred all these different varieties. And like, what does that mean? How do you breed grapes? And you can explain that.
Very carefully.
Well, as he explained, it's pollination with bees, right?
Yeah, well, pollination by hand instead of by bees.
Okay.
Bees are indiscriminate. They'll have sex with any flower.
Right, okay. But Jeff didn't.
Jeff didn't. Jeff was very deliberate about
his grape sex.
How the grapes were bred. And so, for a few years, we had thousands of varieties behind the house. We learned that we could grow a seedless thin-skinned muscadine.
Technically, you got to have seed.
You do. So it's in these grapes, it's an aqueous seed.
Aqueous.
So it has a membrane that doesn't harden. So when you bite it, you can't tell the difference from the pulp.
Yeah, and for the audience, if you're not from North Carolina, you may not understand the magic of muscadines, but this somewhat magical grape in terms of its, as we're learning all the healing properties or potential healing properties, but it's got a terribly thick skin and a terribly crunchy seed.
It's a juice bomb wrapped in shoe leather with rocks in the center.
Very well put. It's not an easy thing to eat, right?
Yeah.
But go ahead.
We changed that. So I wanted to grow grapes. And wine grapes here are a miserable failure. And if you've ever had muscadine wine...
Just for the record, because we're in the South, there's all kinds of... They're not meant to grow here, basically. The varieties people try to grow...
Vinifera's not. Muscadine are.
But the types of grapes people keep trying to grow here, bugs, mold, all sorts of things. It's just they're not sort of built for this area, right?
Yeah, they're not. And muscadines, interestingly, are the only native grape to North America.
No kidding.
Yeah. So every other grape that's been brought in has been...
The Nortons and all those other things up in Virginia.
Well, those are varietal muscadines.
Okay.
Muscadine varietals. Scuppernong.
Okay, is a muscadine variety. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Muscadines are a superfruit. And the way that we grow our muscadines makes them even more of a superfruit. We call them superhero grapes. So you have one of our grapes, you have as many as 17 Thompson seedless grapes in terms of nutrient quality.
And how do you measure all that?
Well, you measure it with nutrient density and with nutrient quality. Mm-hmm. And so we kid around a lot, and we borrow a phrase from Interstate 95 South, and we say, we dare to bear.
Oh, there you go.
We show all the process and all all the performance metrics for our grape.
So back to our sort of course of Occudocs for a second, because I could go on forever talking about the regenerative farming aspects of all this. Is fascinating. Yeah, how does one become today's world, it's not so easy to become a farmer, is it? Or is it?
Look, if somebody came to me and said they wanted to farm, I'd say find something else to do.
Interesting.
Look, we still as a society have not figured out how to reward farmers.
So you mean the North
doing the
Carolina
right
Department
thing.
of Agriculture is not going to sponsor this podcast for me?
They might. If they do, you've done an exceptional thing.
Greg, I'm going to argue with you for a second because I can't.
Please.
Don't agree that not being a farmer is a bad thing. It's, it is hard, it is tough, but when you succeed at things that are terribly challenging in life, aren't they even more meaningful? I don't know.
No,
let me pose that to you. I mean, when you succeed at something that's really difficult, doesn't that even resonate even more?
Well, we haven't succeeded yet.
No.
But our goal is to be farming at software margins. And to do that, we've had to develop our own grape.
Explain to the world what that means.
It means at a 60% gross margin, 50 to 60% gross margin.
And why do you need that kind of margin?
Because I have to return capital.
So
Capital's like water. It's going to flow to the places where it can get the highest return.
And, I guess this is the thing about farming. It requires capital. The scale you're doing it at,
It definitely does.
Extraordinary amount of capital.
Yeah, we put $13 million in so far.
Wow.
Not including land. But we pioneered a lot of things, Bill. Mm-hmm. You know the difference between a pioneer and a settler.
The arrows in their back.
Right.
I still think if you want to be a farmer, be a smaller scale. You don't have to be Greg Bohlen and try to spill $1 billion. But I mean, we live in the land of small organic farms. They're not ambitious like you are. They don't need to make $1 zillion bucks, but they have a pretty good life.
You've got to be able to make a living.
Oh yeah, and
you have to be able to take out as much risk of the process as you can, which is what regenerative farming is all about. It's about reducing risk in each of the applications that you have variability.
It's fascinating why it took us so long to figure this out, isn't it? But regenerative farming, I've tried to study a bit myself, and it seems like just an infinitely smarter way to go.
I think it is, but it's infinitely more challenging.
How so?
Well, if you have Japanese beetles, you grab 7 if you're a conventional farmer.
Right. That's a dust that's poison to a lot of stuff, and you kill the bugs and
kill the bees.
It's not so good. Not good at all.
But you aren't worried about the bees in the short run if you're a conventional farmer.
Right.
You're worried about saving the crop.
Right. And you don't worry about the soil either.
Right. That's the thing, Bill, that we've learned in the last decade is the quality of food is predicted by the quality of the soil that it grows in.
Yep. Garbage in, garbage out, so to speak, right?
Yep.
And have we always had, like you had a PhD microbiologist on staff for a while, helping you with a incredibly successful, it seems, worm operation and spraying, you're healing your soil. I mean, you're not just growing grapes. You've had to take upon taking the soil first and healing it, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and we always say the shovel never lies.
Yeah.
So if you take a shovel and you stick it in to our grapes in the vineyard where it's growing, you get the shovel to sink all the way down. You pull it, you tip it back, and you pull up platy and blocky, black, carbon-rich soil filled with roots. What we've done is we've tried to accelerate the process of rebuilding the soil. And we've done that with the vermiculture lab, using the worms. We've done that with compost and compost teas.
Let's not forget those beautiful
Cover
sheep
crops,
ears.
The sheep, all a piece and part of regenerative farming. And we've been blessed. We just, a couple of weeks ago, got notice we've been upgraded to Regenerative 5, which is the highest level of regenerative certification that you can have.
So back to Occudocs. The thing about your operation is it shows me there's lots of different roles to be had and jobs to be done that are if you ask me, pretty darn interesting and with a great group of people. So, showing up to work at your place is not a bad place to show up, right? A. B, what you're doing may change the world. And it's a great pastime to be part of something where you're trying to create something so special. But,
Thank you.
But it's great. I think you're a great value for Occudocs listeners or viewers because there are lots of roles, there are lots of jobs that need to be taken on, and you just have to sort of stick your nose out there and find them sometimes or ask around.
Yeah, I mean, we have everything from agronomists to shepherds to vineyard operators to workers.
You got a whole educational operation, don't you? You're trying to not only just grow this stuff, but start educating the public about that. Those are opportunities for people to help you communicate.
Yeah.
So there's so many roles that really, and it takes all of you to working together, as you well know. Otherwise, one weak link is, not so fun.
Yeah.
Right?
One thing breaks. You're only as strong as the weakest link in production.
Any advice you would have for young people as they start out, no matter what they're thinking about?
Do what others are not willing to do.
Good advice.
If you're willing to do hard things that other people are not willing to do, you'll learn. And that gain knowledge has a lot of value.
Absolutely. Not to mention you earn the respect of the people that you're working for, particularly realizing that you're willing to do that because it tells them a lot of things about you.
Yeah, well, nobody on the farm has a 40-hour-a-week job.
No, never. It was never part of the job description, was it?
No.
But, the things that you're talking about with your operation, I think bode well for people to listen to about their own lives and relate to that. Because you got to be willing to experiment and and build a foundation, though, of knowledge. And then you really have got something.
For me, farming is what I want to do. I want to show the world that we can, at scale, generate significant net revenues on a consistent basis. And I want to own the freeze-dried market. And that's a process that whenever I look at a market, Bill, I look for things that are highly fragmented, that there's not one leader in the space. I mean, there's always one company that ends up rising to the top. And they rise to the top because they put the work in down here. And they built the foundation that it takes to be successful. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been, for the last 7 years, building this farm and trying to figure out what market we were going to go into. Were we going to go into fresh? Were we going to go into juice? Were we going to go into freeze-dried? Which is ultimately where we decided to go, because we see the freeze-dried market as incredibly fragmented, not a lot of competition, and the competition's horrible. If you have a freeze-dried product today, it's like eating
Cardboard,
or that's a kind word for it, maybe a dried sponge.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done is we've been able
Yes, we have them right here. I can't wait to eat one.
We've been able to go from a product that was horrible to something that people really like and really want to eat.
Motivation, it's not just about the money, is it?
No. My dad told me that there was no room for me to come back to the farm when I was in high school. And he said, there's just no way to make a living farming, so you need to go do something else. My goal is to be able to show how people can make a living farming.
That's great. So what is your day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month? Because you do wear two hats.
Yeah.
Among many.
So venture capital is always my first job. That I have to get up in the morning and I have to manage companies. I'm on boards. I have investments that we've made that I have to oversee. That's always job number one. But then when I get job number one done, I get to go to the farm. For me, it's about working with the people that I work with. You know most of the people that are on the farm. And you know that I have curated a group of the finest individuals with the deepest and sincerest motivations to change the world. And I like to work with those people. Just like in the venture capital business, I like to work with, the smartest and the brightest and the people who are changing the world. I get to work with those people every day on the farm.
I think that's a good piece of advice for anybody as they look around for who they want to work with and what they want to do with their life is if you can find a group of people that you genuinely like to go hang out with every day, you got something going then, right? Yeah. Even if your job particularly might not be exactly what you want it to be or do, think about how it might lead you to the next thing you want to do with your life. But always, I think, recognize and treasure the relationships that you end up with your coworkers. Because I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of phenomenal coworkers. I mean, that's why I love doing what I do. Is the people I get to meet in this business are the best.
We have a saying: energy matters.
Yeah,
and that energy that an organization gives off matters to those that are around it.
Farming is one of the least understood occupations on planet Earth. Not too many people do it. We don't see them. They're sort of behind the scenes. We just don't really understand it. But it seems like without farmers, we're in bad shape, right? I mean, what happens if we don't have farmers?
We don't have food.
We don't have food. If we don't have food, we're not alive, right? So, what about the value and the purpose of farming? We need them. We need farmers.
We do, but we need farmers who are dedicated to doing things that provide stewardship to our soil, to our land, and who are willing to be outside the box. And by outside the box, I mean willing to grow differently than their fathers and grandfathers grew.
So your points about laying the foundation to be successful with all your business didn't escape me. That's also anybody that wants to build a life with an occupation or a job, you've got to find those foundational kind of things to build upon. And whether it's an education or experience or mentorship, awareness, starts with awareness of whatever job that you might be good at. And then it becomes a willingness to try different things until experiment and not be afraid of failure as well as success.
That's right. There's no shame in a pivot.
No, because you learn from it.
One thing that's inevitable in anything, any career, any business, any industry is change.
You've discussed how you wouldn't even be a farmer possibly or recommend somebody be a farmer. What would it take for farming to be a good occupation?
Bill, farming is going to change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 50.
Wow. How so?
So consumers are waking up. So it's still the 80-20 rule. 20% of the consumers are waking up and saying, what I put into my body matters. Because
terribly,
I want to push off healthcare costs. I don't want to be subject to medicine and using everything that
side effects, costs. It's much better to be healthy than not.
It is. And so I think people are really getting smart and they're understanding the concept of nutrient density. And just like calorie counts have been on food for a lot of years, you're going to start seeing people, we are for sure, talking about the nutrient quality of what's inside of a package. And we think that's going to be far more important to consumers in the next decade. And so farmers who realize that and take advantage of it and disenfranchise themselves from the commodity markets and get very focused on knowing their customer will be successful.
Agree. Greg, thank you for being here. Just a great guest and a neighbor and friend, and so much information about venture capital and regenerative farming, and good luck with all of your ventures. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Bill.